Hey, what's up guys? Now today's video is going to be slightly different to the usual stuff that I do. This is going to be a top 5 reasons not to have kids. Now this video is not going to be a MGTOW type thing, it's not going to be an MRA type thing, or whatever the female equivalent would be. This is going to be gender non-specific, so all the things in this list, in no particular order, can be given to a man or a woman to give them reasons why they shouldn't have kids. Now, with all that shit out the way, let's get down to the list, shall we? Overpopulation. Overpopulation is a massive problem in today's world. And yes, I know what some of you are thinking. Mitch, there are a myriad of different reasons why overpopulation is happening. Yes, but having more babies is a massive factor in overpopulation. It's called overpopulation for a reason. Now, let's get into this, shall we? Now, since the 1400s, after the bubonic plague swept almost most of the world in the 1340s and 50s, the human population has been growing steadily and more rapidly since that time. So through most of that time anyway, there's been a sort of equilibrium between the birth rates and the death rates, so that the population has grown steadily and not putting too much of a strain on the earth and our resources. But since our scientific knowledge and technology has grown, this has created an imbalance. So on one side we have the infant mortality rate decreasing, and on the flip side we have the human life expectancy of both genders increasing exponentially in these centuries, which is contributing towards this overpopulation. And having kids, and more kids, is not helping, especially in the 20th century and the 19th century lesser so. The population has literally exploded in several population booms, most notably being the baby boomers of the 40s to the 50s and early 60s at a push. Now, what does overpopulation mean for us? How does it mean that we should not have kids? Well, with more humans means that there are less resources for the whole human race to use and to grow with, and to build houses and cities and to feed ourselves and to drink. And this creates friction, because this means that with so limited resources, that means countries, cultures, individuals will be fighting over the scraps that are left, because the earth simply cannot sustain the amount of people that are currently being born. So that means more conflict, more wars, and basically this could lead to our destruction, nuclear Armageddon, if the button is pressed and if things get so severe. And most of these people who are being born are not rich, or at least middle class or working class to the extent that they are well educated and skilled. Most of these people, sadly, are poverty stricken, they live under the breadline, and they haven't got much of an education to speak of. So that means that they have no knowledge when it comes to sexual education or contraception or how family planning works. So they have loads of children, which means that the state or whatever system they have has a massive burden, and this impacts all of us. Even if you can't feel it from 100 miles away, the simple fact of the matter is that we have an ongoing housing crisis in many countries, and resource crisis in the world speaks volumes to the problems that we have currently and why we should not have any kids. What's also contributing to our death and destruction via overpopulation is that with more people growing, this means more people will be forced to create more buildings and infrastructure in order to cater to these people. So that means with our insatiable appetite for destruction and to harvest shit, that means that there will be more deforestation, more mining and more hunting. And being the human race that we are, we do this in excess. So that means there will be animals being extinct through hunting or through the loss of habitats. And this is all because there's a growing number of humans that need these sources. So that's number one for you. And number two, responsibility. It's a big responsibility to have a child or children, and for some people this is simply too much. Now I know what you're saying, and we'll get to that later, but Mitch, surely these people are just selfish and immature. Not necessarily. I've had friends who've had abortions because they simply cannot afford to have a child. Maybe they're too young, maybe they don't have enough money, but either way, some families are thrust upon this without them really wanting to. Even though we have the pill and condoms, they're not that effective. Even though they're effective most of the time, sometimes it takes only one instance of failure for there to be a pregnancy, and that means decisions have to be made. And for some people, the pressure of having children is simply too much, at least on their finances, let alone the physical and mental things, which we'll get into. Some people simply cannot because maybe they aren't immature, or maybe they're not ready. Maybe they're having mentally ill stuff in their heads, which means that they're incapable of being responsible. It's not necessarily because they're immature and they're selfish and they just can't be bothered, and when they have kids they just neglect the children. Some people are just physically and mentally incapable of doing it, and I think that is another reason why people shouldn't have kids, because then these kids are going to be left to the state, or other family members are going to have to look after them, and nobody wants that, do they? We want all children to have a good start in life, don't we? And yes, number 3 is societal pressures. As I alluded to earlier, there is a societal pressure, hell, even familial pressure for people to have kids. Usually couples, single people, less so. So that means you can be a couple who wishes to have no children whatsoever, and you will be hanging out with other couples who have children, and they will ask you, why are you not having kids? Why are you so selfish? So there's this pressure. I don't think most of it is intentional, but there is this pressure for couples to have kids, even if they don't want it, even if they might not be capable of doing it, and this creates strains on them. And also, their grandparents and their parents will be pushing them too, because they have this silly fantasy in their heads that they want to continue the family line and their lineage and to have kids to show that their genes are passing on. And what I don't agree with is that it's selfish to not have kids. Why is it selfish to not have kids? Every time somebody says this, they never really give me a good reason. If anything, I found that parents can be very selfish, because either their kids can do no wrong, they spoil their kids, and if the kids do wrong to you and you complain, these parents will get overly protective, unless of course they're good parents and can see that the kid has done bad. But in this day and age of mollycoddling and kids can do no wrong and what have you, we've pretty much raised my generation, which are the most selfish and self-entitled generation of kids. And yes, number 4, physical and mental changes. Going through pregnancy or going through having your firstborn brings about many physical and mental changes. So let's start with the woman, shall we? Because that's probably the one that we could most agree on. Now with women, their entire body and their mental state changes. For example, their body has increased amount of hormones which can impact their mood, impact their personality. And let's not forget the physical changes. Pregnancy and labour puts a hell of a lot of physical strain on women, so they may put on weight, parts of their bodies may become weaker, it might even develop some kind of arthritis in their hips if they have quite a lot of children. In fact, they can even die. Sometimes they may have a miscarriage, which can give them mental problems, let alone the hormones causing issues with their mood, and postnatal depression. Not all women find it fine and dandy after having a child. And let's not forget, some of these women might not have very long maternity leaves or have any at all and have to go straight back to work, which only increases the pressure on their bodies, and the kids won't be with them for very long. And now let's go to the dads. Now you may be thinking, physical changes? Dads? No way. Well, men do go through some kind of physical change. That is mainly hormonal. When he enters a relationship, that decreases slightly. Then when the mother is pregnant, it decreases even more, and then when the child is born, again it decreases. I don't know why. I saw this on a documentary on the BBC. I do believe this is probably because his parental instincts are kicking in, which probably means he has to be more nurturing, more caring, and can't be as competitive and aggressive as he once could as either a younger man or as a single man. So there's a physical change, and that also impacts his mental health as well, because then he becomes different, becomes calmer potentially, or even more stressed, and both parents become stressed because the child cries and bawls all the time because it doesn't know how to say, I'm hungry, I'm sad, I want to go to sleep, I want to wake up. So they get tired, they argue, and some couples, because of this stress, because they can't sleep, because they can't see each other all the time, because one parent is stuck with the child more than another, this creates friction and thus divorces. So childhood, rearing and having kids can lead to divorce rates increasing, although probably not as much as some other factors as we were aware of on this channel. And 5, children are ungrateful. Children are amongst the most ungrateful specimens on this unholy earth. Children are not grateful that you put them into this world. They do not care that other people live in this world. All they seem to care about, at least for a number of years, some of them do mature to the extent that they do care about others. This is a slow process, I do agree. They simply don't care. They will be naughty, nasty, they will be selfish. And these parents will just think, oh, this is amazing, this is a fantastic thing. Look, we just brought these things, these meat bags into the world. Aren't you happy for us? And for the rest of us who don't have children, who don't want to increase the strain on the planet that we call home, we say no. So there we have it, people. That's the end of the video. My top 5 reasons for not having kids. Have you got more top 5 reasons? Do you agree? Do you disagree? If so, write down in the comments below. I've been CharmingMan93. Like and share the video, subscribe to my channel, donate to my Patreon, and I will see you all later.